All right, I gotta do this thing, so you guys gotta be quiet soon.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, how are you? We'll start at 5:01 Pacific time. Just give people a couple more minutes to come in. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and kick this off. This is my first spaces, so I apologize if I screw anything up technically. Um, what I want to cover today as part of this process is a little more detail on what we put out on Twitter in terms of how we were proposing a change to the Ionic board, the Ionic business model. And specifically, I want to talk about the overarching objective we have, the plan that we propose to execute to, the team that we want to implement for that execution, how we want to deal with the board and existing contracts and commitments that are put in place, and finally our motivation and consideration for doing this, and then open it up to AMA. I'm joined by Mike Abbate, who's one of my coworkers at Figure Markets. I'm going to be reading off a document that's I'm going to make publicly available. We're also recording this, so you'll have both the recorded session and then a document to reference back to. And it's going to sound a little bit like I'm reading off this document, and I apologize that you don't get my normally effusive personality, but we're trying to be very particular about the words that we're using here and about what we're trying to do. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off and start with the objective. So the motivation for what we're trying to do is to get shareholders either through an asset sale, strategic combination, organically, or straight up liquidation, the most value and liquidity we can for their shares. So we're not introducing any plan which is, trust us, give us a year and we'll create some value out of this. We're focused on getting liquidity as quickly as possible And that liquidity could come in the form of the liquidation of the entity itself. It could come in the form of a sale. It could come in the form of a secondary capital injection that would take existing shareholders out. But the intent is to get liquidity as quickly as possible and at the highest value that we can. So what we're trying to do from the plan standpoint, and we kind of look at this as three different steps. The first step is we need to figure out what's in Ionic today. So we know what they started with. We did a considerable amount of work in the Celsius bankruptcy process. We understand the assets at the starting point extremely well. We don't know what's happened since then, and the company hasn't been very transparent as to what's happened since then. So we don't understand the profitability of the facilities that they have. We don't know what the pro forma projections are or the likelihood of achieving those projections. We don't know what the current book value is. And so we'd like to be able to understand that to really set us up for step two. And step two is doing three different things concurrently. So the first thing we want to do is determine the liquidation value and or sale value of the existing assets. It's a very different environment now than it was a year ago. Potential buyers are in a much better shape financially today and can likely pay considerably more than they could 12 to 18 months ago when reorganization was first contemplated. We're seeing M&A activity, both cooperative and non-cooperative in the crypto mining space right now. It's indicative of the fact that this market has some life to it right now. Second, we want to build and test the markets, build and test with the markets a viable business plan. So we want to look at something that incorporates AI, it incorporates green, and incorporates the blockchain native carbon marketplace that we've envisioned. And we want to test the market reaction to that story. Does that resonate? Is that something people want to put capital into and contribute into? And third, we want to issue the stock on the Figure Market ATS, move the custody and transfer agent from Odyssey to Figure Markets. In a liquidation, that stock's going to be the vehicle for distribution of stablecoin and other crypto assets and other assets. In secondary liquidity, that's the vehicle that you'd use to sell. So you'd effectively be able to sell that stock into the market for cash. On step three, the question is, where's the best price coming from? So is it a liquidation strategic combination? Is it organic growth story? If it's liquidation strategic combination, then what we would propose is to determine any excess cash or crypto collateral, including Bitcoin, distribute that immediately to shareholders. So if we're going to sell the business or run the business down, the company doesn't need a balance sheet to do that. And then we want to kick off a process to maximize shareholder value. So we would be doing that through the markets process and distributing as we add assets that are generated through this process through the markets wallet. If we decide the best path is organically to build something out or strategic combinations therein, we would have to find a near-term mining partner to transition off of HUT. We want to find one that's more affordable than the current $15 million a year run rate and one that's strategically aligned for Ionic itself. But very quickly, we need to bring that expertise in-house and work with folks that can effectively do that work inside. We need to stand up a Dutch auction to clear day one sellers. So there's a lot of confusion about this, and let me explain what this is and why we're doing it. So there's a lot of folks who want to sell their stock immediately, and we don't have an existing market for it. So we listed the stock, whether it's on the ATS or even it was on the NASDAQ. If we have a bunch of sellers and we don't have buyers lined up, the price of the stock's going to collapse. And so we need to have capital that's going to step in and bid. The reason we do the Dutch auction is it allows you to get effectively the best price for the amount you want to sell. So the way this works is you could say, I'll sell all my shares at $20 and half my shares at $10. And the bids that come in work in the same way. And we effectively find the price that clears the market. That price that clears the market would have to be better than the liquidation value if we just outright sold the business or outright liquidated the business. So assuming that that's the case, that Dutch auction would get folks who want to sell immediately cash for their shares. And this is where I've been saying on Twitter and Reddit and some of the other social channels, this gives you the best of both, right? In the worst case, you're going to get the liquidation value. In the best case, you're going to get someone who wants to pay through that value because they see enterprise value in the business. But either way, it's getting you liquidity if you want it. And that's what's key. And so we think this approach gives the most value to the shareholders. We think it does everything everyone needs, which is those that want to get out have liquidity to get out, those that want to stay in have the option to stay in, and you can do both. You can sell some, you can keep some. But we see this as the most robust way to create value out of the current Ionic situation. So let me move on to the team. What we're doing is we're nominating Mike Abbate to be the CEO of Ionic. So Mike is extremely familiar with Ionic. He bid on Ionic or bid on Celsius, was part of Novawulf. He's on the call with me today. He's going to answer questions in the AMA, so you can ask Mike whatever you want. And while he's at Figure Markets today, he would be moving over to Ionic in the CEO role full time. And in that context, he's going to serve for the benefit of you as shareholders. So he's not a Figure employee. He's not serving back to Figure. He's not, there's no side agreement or what have you between Mike and ourselves. He'd be there to focus on this plan and executing on maximizing shareholder value. He's got a significant amount of expertise in distressed assets and a very extensive network in the mining community to help with advisors and potential takeout partners. And should we make the decision that we're going to do something on a continual basis from a mining standpoint, Mike has a series of network resources that would come in, both an advisory and employee construct to be able to help build that out. We're suggesting that I take a board seat, and that would be up to the shareholders to approve that. Irrespective if I'm approved for a board role or not, I'm going to be working hands-on diligently on this effort. This is something that's very important to us, and I'll come to some of the tangible reasons why as we get to the end of this discussion. But I'm going to be involved irrespective to try to push this through. I want to talk about the board and the existing contracts. So today, the Ionic board has 7 seats, and there's 6 people sitting in those seats. 1 seat's vacant. 2 of those seats were given to members of the UCC. 2 of those seats belong to the Series B shareholder, which is HUT 8, and 3 seats are independent. Our position is that the chair of the board, Manny Aidoo, has not acted in the best interest of shareholders and explicitly violated the plan approved by Judge Cagney. In particular, the board waived the liquidity provision that was triggered on June 1st of 2024. So the liquidity provision said that if the stock is not listed and trading, Ionic has the ability to cancel the HUT 8 relationship, to cancel the Series B stock, to eliminate the Series B board roles. And we believe that's what should have been happening. And in fact, that liquidity provision was core to the plan approval by Judge Cagney. And so we don't believe that it was within anyone's realm or ability to cancel that liquidity provision. And we would intend to treat that liquidity provision as triggered. That would allow us to terminate the HUT 8 agreement. It would allow us to eliminate the Series B board seats. I think our proposal would be to reduce the board size down to 5 to make it manageable, as opposed to have the 7 board seats. So effectively eliminate the 2 HUT 8 seats and effectively have Abbate, if it's myself, or whomever that second seat is, plus 3 independent seats elected by shareholders. We anticipate that HUT 8 would fight this decision, but for reasons that we don't want to go into as part of this call, we believe we have an extremely strong position in terms of defending this process or this decision. We know that the creditor community has a lot of interest in pursuing the board for damages, going back to the original decision to partner with Fahrenheit all the way up to today. This is not in our direct mandate, but we intend to work with the appropriate parties should they seek legal remedy against any and all board members, past and current. So I want to talk about why we're doing this, because a lot of you have expressed some skepticism, and I have a huge amount of sympathy and empathy for the processes that you've gone through. And you're saying, okay, is this another scam? Is this something, why are these guys leading in? And remember, we've been involved in the bankruptcy process since the very beginning. And there were 2 things that we saw of immense value as it related to Celsius and taking Celsius out of bankruptcy. The first was the ability to list Ionic as a public company on our alternative trading system. So the ability to get public equity listed on blockchain is virtually impossible. The SEC is not going to allow any S1, or at least my opinion is they won't allow any S1 to list public equity directly to chain. Bankruptcy has a unique provision in Chapter 11 called 1145. And 1145 allows you to issue public equity exempt from national registration. So you don't need an S1. And so we saw this as a path to be able to get the first public equity listed native on chain. And our view would be that that public equity would show considerable liquidity, that people that traded Bitcoin would want to move over and buy and sell the mining stock as well. And remember, the original vision we had for what is now called Ionic was much more than a miner, but unfortunately that's the role that it's been cast to today. And if we could demonstrate that liquidity, then we could go to other miners like BitDeer, for example, and say, look, you trade $5 million a day on the NASDAQ, you could trade 250 million a day here. Why don't you move over and start building that concentric process of, going to miners, then going to AI companies, then going to other companies, and effectively building out an ecosystem that is what we're ultimately all trying to get to, which is, the ability to trade everything from crypto to stock to fixed income, all native on chain, all decentralized custody. And so we saw huge value in that. We also see huge value in the community, the Celsius community, the way that you banded together despite a lot of the infighting that happens. You're extremely committed to the democratization of finance and to the crypto markets, and understandably frustrated by the bankruptcies, and more recently, this perception that there's a rigged game here. And I want to give you an example of something that we did on the FTX side, and kind of showing where our head's at. So, at FTX, a lot of the creditors were really unhappy when Galaxy started selling Solana, especially in that first auction that they sold at a heavy discount to Pantera. And we put a note out on Twitter on a Saturday and said, look, if we can get enough people interested, we'll form a fund and bid on the next auction. And I thought we'd get, a couple dozen people and a few $1 million. And by Monday, we had 535 IOIs and $235 million, and set up a fund faster than anyone's ever done it and bid on the auction. We didn't get it that auction, but we did get it further down, and bought over $150 million of Solana at a 40% discount. And we believe that there's a huge opportunity to restore the faith in this original vision that we all have with blockchain and decentralization, and want to be able to build into that. What we're trying to do with Figure is really build the exchange of everything. And so we understand that there's value that accrues to us out of this, and we want to reciprocate that value back. And so what we proposed is to contribute at least 5% of our stock, which is worth at least $25 million today. Could be more, depending on how you look at it. And another $25 million in hash, which is the utility token that's native to Provenance, into the Ionic transaction. So that works out to about $1.35 a share in value that we're contributing, with what we think is considerable upside. And again, if we choose to liquidate, we're still doing this contribution. You're still going to ultimately get those distributions, but it's value that we see accruing into this, and that's our motivation and why we're trying to provide some reciprocity there. There's a lot of discussion around, is this the right path? Should we try to restart this? Should we just liquidate it? The point is, it doesn't matter where your head is right now. What we have to agitate for is a special board meeting. The board is not going to meet and consider anything that we're proposing unless we force this special meeting. And that special meeting then goes on record for us to present our frustrations, our plans, our paths to providing liquidity and outcomes for folks. And that's a very hard venue for independent board directors to be able to ignore. And so the real goal isn't so much that we want to get to the 50%, which gives us board control in terms of shareholder count. It's to get to that 25% that allows us to agitate and force for the meeting. And we're making good headway there, right? We're probably a third of the way there right now in terms of the amount of shares that we need. And we still have a lot of large institutional buyers that are coming on board and signing on to this. So, I think there's a clear path for us to get there. But just remember, this isn't about endorsing our plan or Simon or Tony's plan or whoever's plan it might be. This is about agitating for that board meeting so that your voice can be heard, so that alternatives can be presented in public record, and that we can force decisions that are for the benefit of all shareholders. So I'm gonna pause there and open up the floor to any questions that folks have. I made Tony a co-host. Now, this isn't Tony's plan per se, but we've talked to Tony pretty closely about this, and want to work with him in terms of getting that initial 25% shareholder count. So Tony, you're free to speak anytime you want. Mike, Abbate, you as well. But we'd love to have anyone that has questions come up and ask away.
So before we go on questions, I just wanted to just say something a little bit here. We've been in this bankruptcy now going on 2 years, right? Mike Abbate's been on it, Mike Cagney, a bunch of others. In this process, I think we've all seen some pretty despicable stuff happening in the background. Everyone says that's how bankruptcy goes, but I don't really know. If I were to make a list of the top 10 worst human beings I've ever met in my life, right? Like just the worst people ever, probably 7 or 8 of those I met during this bankruptcy. And I think a lot of stuff has gone down, especially with this board, especially with Manny Aidoo, especially with the bankers, especially with all these guys. I think there's a real pathway there to get some value out of these guys. And when I say that, obviously this is a little bit of trust me, bro. I've dealt with Mike Cagney for pretty much a lot of this bankruptcy. Every time something went wrong, they always go back to him. Hey, Mike, can you fix this problem for us? Mike comes in. Hey, I have a solution. They say, okay, we got it from here. We'll take over from this point. Thank you for the idea. And then they mess it up. And then it's just a cycle. They repeat and they keep doing the same thing over and over again. And in the end, it's become very clear the only goal is to make money for themselves, right? This is what these guys want to do. They want to put money in their pockets, and it's basically our money that they're taking. Um, what I would like to do, and that's not necessarily what's going to happen or whatever the case may be, is we voted for a wind down. We want to wind down this entity, and we want to get back the money that was basically given to these guys. They're not qualified. They have no business running a mining business, a mining operation. We want to give that money back to the shareholders, formerly the creditors, right? Uh, During the bankruptcy, obviously Bitcoin was what in the 20,000 range. No one had money. Everything was kind of depressed. What we're seeing now in these data centers, the HPC businesses, people are throwing money left and right. The Cedarvale site, for whatever it's worth, may have considerable value. Now that might be we have a new CEO, someone that's in that type of industry that knows what they're doing to run the ship. That might be in a liquidation, that might be a sale, that might be an all stock deal. Maybe one of these other publicly traded miners want to acquire the site. They want to give us equity in their company. Maybe one of these HBC businesses, they want to take advantage of the bankruptcy provision that they can list on the Nasdaq or wherever. There's a lot of options there. CoreScientific for one, the ones that we bought it from, now that they have their CoreWeave deal, I'm sure they would love to have this 300 megawatts back so they could sell it to CoreWeave. There's a lot of possibilities, a lot of options. One thing that I know for a fact, Manny Aidoo, the people that are running Ionic right now, they have no idea what they're doing. They have no business doing what they're doing, and they're just going to take all of our cash and just dump it down the drain. And it's going to go to zero. I have no doubts that's what's going to happen. And I think we need to get a real group of professionals in there to one, assess what we have, fix whatever mistakes they've made, because I'm pretty sure they made a ton of them, and then go from there, see where we end up. You know.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate that the proposal we're putting out there, it certainly doesn't preclude the wind down. And in fact, the goal is the highest price with near-term liquidity. So, this isn't a give us a year and we're going to turn this thing around. This is, whatever we can get. What we put out there was a 90-day time horizon. Wherever the highest price is going to come through in 90 days, if that's liquidating, if that's selling the assets, if that's, third party capital coming in and taking out everybody that wants to be taken out, organically continuing the business, whatever the best price is what we're going to pursue. And we think that's obviously to the advantage of everybody. So in terms of how to open up the floor for questions, I don't have the best, as I said, I don't do a lot of spaces. So hopefully Abbate and Tony can help me a little bit on it because they also have the ability to let you speak. But I do have some understanding of this. So I think if you raise your hand, I'm going to see you.
I brought up Thomas. He said he has a few questions.
Great. All right, Thomas, can you speak? Can you unmute yourself?
Hey guys, how are you? I sort of lost my voice, but can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Hey Mike, how are you? Nice to meet you. And
Yeah, you
both
too.
Mikes, Michael and Mike. I guess I was just sort of course, it's unfortunate to see the turn of events, but as a creditor, even ourselves, it's interesting to see, thoughtful and guys that are close to the assets and close to the industry and the vertical that the reorg, equity is tied to, interested in the name. I guess a few things. One, maybe you can I mean, okay, strategic alternatives. In traditional finance, that's kind of an obvious thing, but I guess I'm sort of interested, like, how much financial stake do you guys have in this, and what if you're coming at this from, we're going to list this on our ATS, or I apologize, I don't know what the actual um, correct terminology is for figure. Like what, like how do the shareholders benefit from listing there? Maybe it's a new exchange. You said 5% of equity, so maybe you could go a little deeper on that question. Then on the 11:45 question of being able to list on the Nasdaq, is that still in the cards, or is it because I would have thought because the bankruptcy plan is approved and that 11:45 is like totally out of the cards? So maybe that's too legal of a question, but those are my
No, it's a
two
good
big questions.
it's a good question. So let me start with that one, and then I'll work backwards to the exchange. So the company did issue equity through 11:45. So it's issued public equity. The equity does not have a trading venue, so it's untraded public equity. I know the company has taken the position that that equity is non-transferable. We would disagree with that. There's no reason why that equity can't be transferred. There's no need for a Form 10 or a formal listing to transfer equity. You trade pink sheet equity all the time without a public listing. But effectively, they've already issued the equity. So the equity is outstanding. It's been done through the 11:45 process. And so, we have the ability to run secondary for that equity on our alternative trading system. So what's unique about our alternative trading systems, and we run a couple of different marketplaces. So we run crypto marketplaces onshore. We just got approved to run crypto offshore, but we also run an alternative trading system, and we use it episodically. So for example, we've run secondary for figure equity on that alternative trading system, where we've just opened up our equity for 2 weeks to trade 24/7, 365. And it allows for bearer trading. So in other words, you and I face off bilaterally and trade directly. There is no intermediation. And we can support multi-party computation wallet on the back end, so it's decentralized custody. And so the intent is to get the first public equity listed on that exchange. So we've had private equity like Figure, we've done asset-backed securities. We have effectively a process where we've done about $40 billion of on-chain transactions for loans and asset-backed securities, and those are episodic as well. But what we want is something that is permanent equity trading on that ATS. And so the benefit to us is the value that that creates, and getting the community to be able to trade there, and obviously, to the extent we're doing distributions, distribute into your wallets directly through there in the form of crypto versus checks and cash that the old estate seemed to be proclivity to. Um, and so as part of that, it obviously accrues value to us. And that's why we're contributing what works out to be $50 million of value between our equity and crypto into Ionic, in consideration for being able to get that equity listed and support the community. Hopefully, Tom, that answered your question. You can still speak if you have any more you want to add to that.
No, that was great. I apologize again. I've really lost my voice. It's from too
That's
many
all
phone
right.
calls.
Well,
That is
I'm sorry.
interesting.
I'm sorry I put
Go
this
ahead.
late in the day. I had a hard time trying to manage all the time zones, so I appreciate everyone's,
No, you're fine. You're
especially
fine.
folks in
Actually,
Europe, which it's very early in the morning out there.
well, it's early, but also you're getting. I feel like the Celsius makeup, I feel like, is a lot of North American, and then you have a lot of Australian as well, contingent of creditors. So it's actually a good time. Um, but I was sort of, but that is interesting. Okay, so because your interpretation of 1145, because it was issued under the bankruptcy plan, you'd be able to list it as an ATS. That's very interesting. And then you guys are proposing to give 5% of the equity of this ATS company to the creditors as
Yeah,
part of this.
Yeah, and it's not just the ATS. So Figure Markets owns the ATS. It also owns an onshore crypto exchange, an offshore crypto exchange. The onshore one just launched. The offshore one will launch in September at Token 2049. It owns a lender. A lot of the folks on this call have been refinanced through Figure as part of their Celsius loans. It owns an asset management platform, and what we'll be doing is bringing staking and other vehicles onto the exchange as part of this process. So it's actually what you're getting equity ownership in is what we hope to be the exchange for everything.
Okay, yeah. So it's sort of like that's part of it, and then the other side to it. And maybe I missed this, Michael, when I first joined, or Mike when I first joined. In terms of I'm not an expert on crypto mining, but we see crypto distressed mining deals, pretty frequently. In terms of mismanagement, can you walk me through what you see as some of the mismanagement steps? And then, I thought that, or my understanding is a lot of the assets are quite concentrated in Texas. I don't know if you have a view on that and could provide any color to some of the, well, it used to be creditors, but now shareholders here of the company.
Yeah, Mike, I can take that one. So I don't want to go into too much detail of all the assets here on this call, but high level, there are two assets which are owned. One is the Cedarvale asset, one is what I guess called the Priority Power asset, both that are in Texas. And the remainder of the assets are just rigs, which are hosted at third-party locations. And those rigs are aging and becoming less efficient in each and every day. So, it's optimizing and maximizing those two physically owned plants in Texas, and more importantly, making sure that they're run efficiently and integrated into the electrical grid generally. That's a lot of the value of mining in Bitcoin in Texas specifically. And sorry. And so we need to do a comprehensive update in terms of where things are now. Like Mike mentioned, I was intimately involved in the status of all these assets during bankruptcy. That was before Cedarvale was part of the fleet. But that was 6-9 months ago, and it's unclear what has changed. $200 million, $225 million is on the balance sheet. Where did that go? Right? How much is left? What has been spent? What needs to be spent to be completed? Why did the company need $225 million to start with? Right? Like that's probably the most absurd issue that we need to address here. It was this board who put that amount of cash on the balance sheet. That's creditor cash that should be returned to creditors. And those are questions that we need to get answered. And we won't have that visibility until, as Mike said, we get that agitation at the board and understand exactly, why these changes have happened and what's going on. There's been no transparency, and that's unacceptable.
I mean, just to add to that, I think that the fact that we've lost the CEO, we've had a revolving chair of board members. There's been no shareholder communication. They lost their auditor. The liquidity provision was obviously breached. These aren't the hallmarks of a well-run business, and so I think we don't know what we're going to see when we get in there, but we're kind of hoping for the best and preparing for the worst.
So one thing, if I could just jump in, right? I mean, I'm an investor in a lot of these mining companies. What basically happened here with Celsius Mining is that Alex Mashinsky took $1 billion. He hired 4 people. I forgot their names off the top of my head right now, but he had 4 people, and he just told them, these rigs that we paid whatever in excess of what they actually worth, plug them in somewhere, right? They basically bankrupted CoreScientific in the process. Celsius went bankrupt. This is not a real company. It's not a real mining operation. There is no employees. There's 3 or 4 people that work for the company now. Everything is outsourced. Everything is managers. Everyone is working, hourly, contracted, whatever. We have no staff. We have nobody that knows how to do anything Bitcoin mining related, right? The chairman of the board is I think he was IT at Perella. I don't know why he would be the chairman of this board. If he were to put his resume up for any other mining business, I don't think any of them would even call him back. But we don't really have a company, right? There's nothing there. It's just assets that are most likely mismanaged.
And the other thing I just want to highlight is that they're being mismanaged by a competitor. That's what is really absurd to me. HUT 8 has their own self-interests, and the provision was put in there to be able to cancel the contract, right? When certain promises were not met, those promises were not met, contract should be canceled. I think that's the heart of the issue.
Yeah. Michael,
well, one level, sorry, one level above that is, yeah, it's a competitor, but it's also a competitor that's never built a mining facility himself, right? Asher has no experience building mining facilities. So basically we have a contractor that we have hired who is now responsible to hire other contractors to build the facilities for us. I wouldn't run my business that way. I don't think anyone else would run their business that way. That doesn't make any sense.
can I ask a corporate governance question? So for Michael and Mike, sorry to lean on you guys, but I haven't read the articles of a corporation. Like, what are the requirements to actually call a special meeting, and what do you need to be able to potentially cause change here?
Yeah, we need 25% of the outstanding shareholders to call for a special meeting. That's a relatively high bar for a Delaware corporation, and we're looking into the legality of that, although I don't think it's illegal to do that. But it's 25% of the shareholders. And as I said, we're a third of the way there right now. Great. Anyone else would like to? All right, Maddie.
Yes, Michael. Yes, hello guys. One quick question for Mike. You said your lawyer reviewing the bylaws, so are you confident about the special meeting and the 25%? Does the chairman cannot block this and so on?
So I'm extremely confident that with 25%, we can force a special meeting. There's some provisions that allow the board to not allow that meeting. One of those provisions, or in fact, the only real provision, well, there's two. If the topic of that meeting has already been covered in a general public board meeting, then they can opt to not have that special meeting. Obviously, that's not the case because they've had no board meeting for any public shareholder to participate through. If anything falls out of protocol, the chairperson can effectively cancel the meeting immediately. So we have to be very buttoned up in how we approach this process and basically follow procedurally. So we'll have outside counsel, we'll have everything nailed down in a way that we don't have any footfalls, because anything that we do out of order allows them to cancel that special meeting. And that's what we don't want. Again, getting that 25%, forcing that venue to have a meeting in a public company, in a public forum with the board, I think is all we need to affect change here. And again, we can talk about it. My position has always been the right plan is whatever gets you the most value as quickly as possible. And that's the path we want to follow on. But we absolutely can agitate for a meeting with 25% of the outstanding stock.
One prerequisite, they can postpone this even if we reach 25%, if they have planned one meeting and there is a 90-day windows. Cagney put a deadline to the both creditor board director, Scott and Tom, to reply to his letter on Friday, tomorrow. I assume they have not so far. We are not aware what is happening. Maybe they have called a meeting to counter attack this. So there was the question. So this is a possibility.
Yeah. So you're right that they can elect to not hold a special meeting if they're going to have the meeting within 90 days anyway. That's the same thing because they have up to 90 days to schedule the special meeting. So that's effectively getting what we want in terms of having the board meeting. We sent a letter to Tom and Scott. We got a response from Ionic's general counsel. They asked us to provide a list of shareholders who supported our proposal and to direct all correspondence through the general counsel going forward. We don't intend to respond to that letter. I'm not sure that that's a constructive thing for us to do. I think if they wanted a constructive conversation, they certainly know how to get a hold of us. So we're just going to continue to work with the community to try to hit that 25% threshold and force the meeting.
Another point is the chairman. You were supposed to be the proposed chairman. I understand that the output of this mission is most likely a liquidation if there is a shareholder vote. What about the chairman proposed? Have you someone in mind now?
So I think we'd put it up to the creditors or the stockholders. I think Abbate should be on the board as CEO of Ionic. I'd like to be on the board to have accountability, but I'm going to do the same effort whether I'm on the board or not. So it's not something that needs to be done. And obviously, my service is gratis. I'm not charging or getting a salary to be a board member as part of this. And I think that the shareholders should elect the chairperson. I don't have any specific desire to be that. I don't think Mike Abbate necessarily has desire to be that, although he could be. But I think we just take direction from the shareholders on it.
All right. I remember you were part of the Novawulf fund who bought Claim and now sold them to Cherokee. Do you still own Claim, our shareholder to date, to align incentive? And do you own mining stock? How do you feel running a mining business?
Sure. I mean, Mike, you can go ahead and take that. I'll hop in after you.
Yeah. So unfortunately, as you noted very correctly, I no longer hold my shares, so I have no economic interest currently. And we tried to acquire some shares, and obviously couldn't do that given the blocking of their legal counsel, which again we don't understand why. So that's the economic issue question. And I'm sorry, what was the second half of your question?
The second half was about your personal involvement in the mining industry, your knowledge about that. Do you own mining stocks? What is your...
Absolutely. I mean, Novawulf's largest positions were in the mining sector, and quite honestly, we were probably the most successful investor through navigating the downturn. Our mining investments averaged over a 3x return on the initial investment. Incredibly successful track record, and obviously I'm intimately familiar with all the assets through the extreme diligence that we did. If you remember, it was Novawulf and myself and my team, which is the same team here working with Figure Markets with me now, who analyzed the Celsius mining assets and came up with a lot of the proposal in the original transaction. So we were very well qualified from a knowledge base for sure.
I will finish with the HUT 8 Q2 filing, which has been filled yesterday. We learned something.
Right, Manny, are you still speaking? I don't hear
you. You hear me or not?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I wanted to finish on the HUT 8 Q2 filing. This is the only way we had news about Ionic, like the manager service agreement who dropped the fees from 20 million a year to 15, and moreover, an information about the total energy of the combined Texas site, about 300 megawatts. Did you review the HUT 8 filing, and what information did you find out that is interesting in the event that this company continue or does not liquidate?
So yes, we did review that filing. That's where we got the same information you did in terms of the reduction of the management fee. So although that's a step in the right direction, that $15 million management fee is most likely 3 times higher than what it should be if a lot of that cost was internalized. Other than that, I mean, I read the earnings release, and it sounded like it was a great profit center for HUT 8 to be able to continue with this management agreement, even now that's $15 million rather than 20. So if it's still profitable at 15, just imagine how profitable it was for them at 20, and remember that they've been collecting that fee for, I think, almost a year now.
Thank you, guys. I pass the mic. You said 1/3 of the total 25% is already supported. I have pinned the Michael Cagney tweet with the article and the form. I'm looking forward that 9.5 million voting power is obtained through this endeavor. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. We're looking forward to it too.
Zarin?
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Yeah, I wanted to reiterate a lot of what you said, Tony. I mean, obviously, I was on the loan steering committee, and from the start, it was just uphill battle working against these guys in the UCC. Tom and Scott were the worst, just the absolute worst. You know, working with the lawyers in a real mafia way, just hiding information, and every step of the way. You know, when we first started talking with Mike from Figure, he was trying to come in and help, and they wouldn't even let us talk to Mike. They didn't even want to have Figure as an option. They pushed Novawulf away. They were doing so many different shady things. I mean, it just really adds insult to injury to see what all the pain that we went through as creditors, and then on top of that, these bozos made this material change at the end of the bankruptcy for the additional 200 million, and then they're squandering the rest of our money. It's just you can't even imagine a movie that would be this bad. I mean, it's just so insane what they've done. So I just want to thank Mike and Michael for coming in. I was at a point where I just thought this was a lost cause. There's no value here. In talking to Tony and understanding some of the stuff about the Cedarvale facility, it does seem like there's some value left in this. So I just want to throw my absolute and complete support behind the effort that's going on. And my main point, I guess I wanted to ask was, just given how egregious this whole thing is our only path forward to call for the 25% vote? Is there anything that we could do in terms of the trustee, the U.S. trustee, or the judge, or could we try to get an article in the press and just totally go after the board members and threaten legal action and just say, hey, like, look, guys, we're going to sue you personally if you don't step down immediately? Like, is there is there something we can do other than this 25% vote that could get a solution sooner? Because maybe if we could scare these guys with legal action or something, maybe we just make a deal and get them out and move forward, because I want blood and I definitely want to go after them. But if we could get them to step down and get a solution sooner, I'm all for that. And I guess that would be my question. Is there a way we can get it done sooner? Is there any alternative? And if not, I'm all for this process. Let's do it. But it's just frustrating to think we're going to have to wait another 90 days and then have a meeting. And it's just frustrating to think we'll even have to deal with these bozos, because it's just so egregious what they've done. I mean, they're criminal. So is there any other way to get them to step down and just move forward?
So I think we are going to run a concerted campaign here. We are going to go to the press. I think the press is going to write about this. I think there's a bunch of dimensions going all the way back to the auction and up to where we are right now that have been very heterodox for a bankruptcy process. And so we expect that there should be press pickup and be able to push for that. I think there's a blurred line between the court and the company, because the company is now a public company emerged from bankruptcy. However, there has to be a lot weighing on Judge Glenn that all the other bankruptcies were liquidations. This was the only restart. And it's, right now an abject failure, at least from my perspective. And so I don't know what the ramifications are in terms of what the court can do. We're working with outside counsel to go through that. We intend to take a very aggressive position with outside counsel. And our hope would be the board would lean in to work with us to get a remedy in lieu of forcing this meeting. This meeting is not a good outcome for the board. And so we have to keep pushing forward to get that 25% vote because we have to, again, we can hope for the best. We got to plan for the worst. This is not a good outcome for them. And so, if it looks like we're going to get to that point and there's public pressure, especially on those independent directors, I think there could be a lot of appetite to lean in and try to resolve something sooner. And I'm hoping that's actually what happens.
Cool. Well, thanks a lot. That's all on my part. And just thanks a lot for everything you guys are doing. We appreciate it. We're here for anything you need us for.
Thanks.
Thomas Gardner.
Hey guys, thanks so much for letting me up. Tony, you guys have, you and Simon and everybody, you guys have been just bulldogs throughout this entire thing, and I just cannot thank you enough. My main question here, I guess, is kind of the same thing I've been hearing from a lot of people, and that is, so we're 7, 8, 9% now of the needed shares to force this board meeting. Is it a realistic option at that meeting to be able to affect actual change? Get these HUD 8 members off the board. Clean this, clean the slate on this thing. And one of my other concerns is are we able to stop the cash bleed at this point? These guys have millions and millions of our dollars, and they're just pissing it away at this point from what I can tell. That's really kind of the gist of my question is are we able to get in there with this 25% deal? How realistically close are we to being able to do that? And if we do it, can we really affect change at that meeting? Can it happen right then?
So I think it's a multifaceted response to this, and let me go first, and then obviously any other folks can opine in. What I expect we're going to do is work with some of the existing shareholders / creditors to go to the judge and say, they canceled this liquidity provision, which was the cornerstone of you allowing for the emergence of the company. Remember, we had a very heterodox process that we had an auction that wasn't really an auction. We had a winning bidder that was never able to execute on their winning bid. And then it defaulted back to the UCC without an explicit vote. And the premise that, well, it's the same as the winning bid. And one of the key predicates of it defaulting back was if they weren't successful securing liquidity within 12 months or up to June 1st, 2024 was the timeline, then it would effectively cancel the HUT 8 contract. It would eliminate the Series B shares. So HUT 8 would come off the board. And the board would be in a position to then either wind down or do whatever was best for shareholders because it didn't achieve the objective it was set out to do. And so, what I anticipate or expect us to do is one, work with the judge to enforce that liquidity provision and effectively remove the Series B shareholders. Now that changes the board dynamic significantly because now you've got the 2 UCC members, the 2 independents, and the current board chair. And the current board chair is not going to vote for what we want. But those independents and those UCC directors under the public scrutiny, I think, are going to do what's right for shareholders. And it's hard to make the argument that what's been happening to date has been right for shareholders. Now, we don't know that they've been hemorrhaging money. We don't know they've been losing money. We don't know anything because we haven't seen anything. And so I know there's a lot of expectation that's what's happening. I'm actually optimistic that they haven't been hemorrhaging that much money other than to build out of Cedarvale. But we'll see when we go in. But having that board meeting in public forum for a public company and presenting the issues the company's had and viable alternative plans, those independent directors, including the 2 UCC directors, would be very hard pressed not supporting a change of direction. And so I don't know that it's going to come to the 50% to replace the board because that's what's needed. Otherwise, you have to wait out for the board terms to expire. But the 25% is going to affect the change. And I think that if we're successful getting the judge to say, look, you guys never were, it wasn't in your position to cancel that liquidity provision, that would change the board dynamic immediately. And I think, provide an immediate discussion well in advance of getting to the 25% threshold.
The other thing that I would note is we just started, right? Like this is the first, organized meeting. And Mike and I were just talking prior to this meeting. The reason why I wanted to do the question and answer is to hear from you guys, right? Like to make sure our thoughts are refined, to incorporate all of your great ideas. And I want to highlight one fact, and I apologize, I can't pull up the exact numbers, but on the voting for the plan of the 5 billion of claims, it was like over 3 billion of claims that actually voted. This community is still very engaged, and there's a lot of people on this phone call now. But with a little bit more marketing and a little bit more concerted effort and a more refined plan, I have no doubt that I've seen what this community can do and how it can rally. So as soon as we align around that, I have no doubt that we're already a third of the way there. We can get to 25% pretty quickly, and then the change will happen.
Yeah, and I think I have a pretty solid pulse on what a lot of the shareholders. I speak to them pretty much every day. I haven't gotten back to people last day or so in emails. I have too many emails. I'm trying to get through it. I haven't wanted to get involved. I don't want to get involved. I guess I am kind of stuck into it. It's one of those things. I would probably put my hat in the ring. I don't want a salary. This is blood money as far as I'm concerned. I'm not looking for a six-figure payout. I just want to make sure that creditors, in this case shareholders, get their value back. It doesn't look like we will, but I want to make sure that we get there. There's a lot of methods to get us value. I think Figure is uniquely situated to help us out here. Just one small example, right? A lot of people refinance their loans through Figure because they lost a lot of Bitcoin, a lot of ETH, whatever the case may be. Their loans are looking a little rough. Figure has the ability to use your equity to top off your loans, for example, right? So if you end up refinancing, let's say with another company, you can move it to Figure. You can add your equity onto that loan as extra collateral. There's a lot of things you can do with this equity as opposed to just logging into Odyssey and seeing it say $0, in value.
That's right. I think to build on that point, our what we plan on doing should we be successful, should we be able to issue the equity? And again, I think we'd issue the equity even in a wind down circumstance. Is you'd be able to borrow against that equity, including topping up your existing loans to the extent that you have them with us, or borrow against it on a new basis. You'd be able to use it as collateral, to the extent that you want to trade within our marketplace, and whether that's collateral for perpetuals or leverage on spot. We have one key partner, Jump Crypto, which we believe will make market in that equity. We'll get another tier one market maker for it to provide two-way liquidity. So, our approach is to look at this in a real context with the right infrastructure in place to make it successful.
Well, awesome. I appreciate the info, and Tony, glad to hear that you're down with it, even though you're not really down with it. So,
listen, I'm not qualified to be a board member in a Bitcoin mining company. I think we have to be honest with ourselves. This is not a long-term position. I would be involved for as long as it takes. And if this ends up getting institutional interest and people want to come in and buy up our equity, then I will gladly step aside. Like I said, I don't want money out of this. I'm not trying to get any money. I just want to make sure that we don't lose ours. And by we, I mean everyone I speak to, the people that put their entire nest egg, the people that are 60, 70 years old, that Alex Mashinsky conned them into taking their IRA or whatever, their 401k from Fidelity and all these legitimate companies, and then just putting it into Celsius. And now they're looking at 25% of their money basically left. I want to make sure we can get as much of that money back. Hopefully there's interest. I think there will be. You'd be surprised, but I'll stay involved to make sure that this thing doesn't go south. And I'm not one to hold back my thoughts. Let's just leave it at that. So I think Simon was next.
Hey guys, sorry I missed the beginning. Just want to say a few pieces. From the beginning, to me, this was always a shareholder activist movement against the atrocities that were inflicted upon all of us from Mashinsky and the previous management. And I always wanted us to all be shareholders with a creditor-led plan. We're a crazy bunch of people. But we had this culture of, we were hanging out on spaces every single week. We were figuring out all the issues. And at some point, it became White and Case's plan. And from my perspective, there was a very distinctive point at which White and Case were no longer working for creditors. They were working for the special interest groups that were meant to win the auction. And it became very clear that it wasn't about the best deal. It was about the deal that satisfied all the people that wanted to build a tight ring and control network, and design this for those own interest groups. And that's what slowly happened. This was always a bunch of creditors that were going to be 100% owners in a company. We were always meant to be doing things differently. If we all fucked up and destroyed the company, it was because we did that together. It wasn't meant to be a closed door, give me this job and you get that, and we don't communicate with shareholders. Look, we all know that there's certain regulations and limitations, but screw it. Does Elon Musk do things like by the book, or does he, bend the rules and take it as far as he can within the confines of the law? Do other companies do, investor communications? And so this was destroyed by people thinking that they could use this for their own benefits, and they could take a culture of zero communication, which is what happened from the UCC, and just a lack of leadership and an experience. And those people were the ones that engineered this in order to get what they believed to be the best way of doing this. And so for me, as long as we can all do this together, we can build this together on spaces, we can liquidate together, we can just have a team, a lean team. I always wanted the whole board to be creditors, and so many other people did as well. We fought for that. I got sued for that. All of us had that experience of getting on the wrong side of White and Case, because they knew that they just wanted to do this for their buddies, their people that were meant to get these assets, and it was just a cash grab. So if we can now, just even liquidate this together, do the whatever it's meant to be, but let's do this with the experience of Bitcoin crypto people. Let's do this the way that we always wanted to do this. And if we fuck it up, it's because we all fuck it up together, and that's kind of what I think there should be from here. And this always was meant to be creditors on the boards. This wasn't the White and Case party with all these professionals that don't know shit about Bitcoin mining, don't know anything about the shared experience that we all went through together. They fucked it up, and they need to pay for that. And those decisions were made, and they weren't the right decisions. That could either be a lack of experience, or it could be corruption. My experience, this is when I knew. I mean, there were several occasions when I knew this was messed up. The first one was, well, there's so many of them, but towards the end, when I introduced a Class A team of miners, I'm talking about people that have been involved in Bitcoin mining from 2012. I'm talking about people that invented and manufactured and designed the first chips and ASICs that exist. I'm talking about teams in China and America, that had so much experience in Bitcoin mining. And when I introduced them to the board, zero interest in engaging with them. And this was always only going to work if we built our own team ourselves. Like, if you have one of these mining partners that leeches out in an environment where you have to be really, really lean to make this business work anyway, it's always going to be, it was always going to be an epic failure. So we either liquidate this by making the assets as attractive as possible. You can't sell this in complete distress. Or we build our own team. And by building our own team, I know collectively amongst all of us, we've got what's needed to do that. But White and Case deliberately engineered all of the contracts and all the agreements, and we pushed back hard. I had my team, my lawyers, and everyone go through every single clause and said, "Hey, why are these directors locked in for 3 years? Why is it so hard to get a shareholder meeting?" And if you look back at the original documents that we filed that we tried to get an ad hoc support on, all of these things were pointed out. And one by one, White and Case did not see us as their client anymore. They saw Scott and Tom as their client. They saw their previous clients as their client. And you can tell by just looking at the directors' agreement, the articles, the bylaws, it was all designed for this scenario to make this as hard for us as possible and to maximize the options for those that currently are on the board at the moment. And they fucked it up, you know. And if we're completely wrong, communicate with us. Tell White and Case, fuck your culture. You know, we're not playing it safe anymore. We're going to communicate with shareholders. We're going to show some leadership. And if you're not doing that, it's because you don't have the leadership. You need to step aside, and you need to allow creditors to maximize this and stop being bitches of lawyers that are rinsing everything and using them as your personal lawyer to try and maximize the opportunity for you. That's what I saw, and that's what we need to reverse, and we just need to drain the swamp and do it the way we were always meant to do this before White and Case engineered this whole system to sort out their buddies. That's what I got to say.
So I don't want to get too much in the weeds on that, Simon, right now. But I'm already engaging with a team that focuses on these types of things, going after people like White and Case, like the Centerview, for example. They got $20 million as a success fee. I don't think anyone would consider this a success. But I wasn't joking when I said I would do this just for the enjoyment value of leading that charge against all of these people that literally robbed us blind, completely blind. They took every penny they possibly could, and then they doubled it for no reason whatsoever other than the fact that they're going to pay themselves and their buddies. And I want to make sure that these people see the consequences of it.
So, guys, I know there's a lot of frustration and warranted frustration, and you know, and we should have a venue to vent that through. But I want to keep this just around what we need to do to get the process moving for getting signatures to get that 25% threshold. And you know, but again, I appreciate what you said, Simon. And you know, we've had our own. We've been threatened to be sued by White and Case multiple times through this process as well. And you know, I think in a almost
and we're a client of White and Case.
Well, we fired them when they threatened to sue us,
Yeah.
because that would be a little bit odd for us to employ a law firm that's suing us. But you know, it's been tough, and you know, a lot of you have seen my tweet about the bankruptcy process, which is really illustrated to me. The U.S. bankruptcy process is not aligned for the creditor, and it's unfortunate. And you know, so we're hoping that we have an ability to right a wrong here. So I appreciate everyone's support on that. I think we got a couple more folks that would like to speak.
Dexter and then Eric.
Thanks, Tony. And out of respect for you, Mike, I'll try to stick within your guidelines that you just stated. You know, my frustration, it seems like it's just starting all over again. In order to get 25% of, or even to that 50%, you're going to have to go after the large, those 0.1% creditors who hold a large amount of that stock. And even though I'm in that 1%, it doesn't matter. It's in that 0.1% who hold basically all the cards in this. And my concern is This will just be another board, just like the last one. And I hear all the things that everybody's saying. You're saying the right things, and I would love a board of real Celsius creditors that want to do right by us, by all of us. And what I'm hearing is by creditor selected board. To me, that's just that top 0.1% of creditors getting to pick who's on that board. Is there a way to guarantee those of us like on this call and who've been working through this whole process that it's just not another scam that we've been going through? And I'll leave it at that. And I'll talk more tomorrow. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, everybody else. Over.
And I appreciate your concern on that front. I think, first I'd say that some of the largest creditors, I mean, obviously we've gotten Cherokee support now on Twitter, and others. They're aligned with the idea of getting as much money back as quickly as possible, right? And I think that's a constructive thing for everyone. So I don't think there's a misalignment here. I would hope that our sincerity has been demonstrated just, because we persevered through this process. We're not getting paid to do any of this stuff. We're very focused on trying to find a solution here. And we're certainly not trying to swap ourselves out and put ourselves in the same situation the current board is or HUT 8 is in. I think we would commit contractually or to writing a time horizon, if that's 90 days, then it's 90 days, a time horizon to which a decision is made to provide liquidity. And that liquidity either comes in the form of a sale, an asset sale, or secondary liquidity, buying anyone out who wants to sell. And so, we're focused on that objective. That's what I started the conversation off with in terms of, what is the objective? It's to get shareholders through an asset sale, strategic combination, organic path for liquidation, the most value and liquidity for their shares. And I think there's ways that we can force that contractually within a time horizon so that it doesn't turn into, trust me, Mike Abbate hit a really important point, which is like, we don't know why there's $250 million on the balance sheet or 225 or whatever it is now. Even if we decide that, hey, we can actually get secondary liquidity in here and value, we would still opt, I think, to vote to distribute that back out to the shareholders because it never made sense to be there in the first place, and at least from our perspective. And so, I hear you, and I think structurally there's ways that we can do that. To Simon's point, this is a shareholder-led initiative. The thing about Celsius, it's a little bit different than some of the other bankruptcies, is there aren't real whales here. It's very distributed in terms of shareholder ownership. And so, what you do matters. And so, being part of that 25%, or even getting directionally towards that 25%, we might not even need to get there. If we have press support and, we push on the judge around the liquidity provision and some other aspects, we could potentially force a forum to happen in advance of securing that 25% and work out a remedy in a way that would make sense. The key is just get behind it and force the vote.
Yeah, I mean, small shareholders, large shareholders, nobody's a shareholder because they want to lose money. So I think everyone will be on board with anything that will minimize the losses. Let's just leave it at that.
Okay. Is Eric up next?
Yeah, Eric. And then...
Hey, everyone. Just two quick things. And Thomas may have already brought it up to you, Mike, but my phone was having an issue, so I'm not sure if this was his question. Can you clarify when you say listing it on chain? Obviously, that's of interest to me. But what exactly do you mean listing what on chain, and what are the benefits of that versus whatever is commonly not on chain? That's my first question. And my second question, and this is maybe more of an opinion thing, and this is relates to FTX. I guess the judge allowed FTX, the estate, if I'm not mistaken, to sell Solana at a discount, either to Galaxy or Galaxy sold. I don't know what the hell that whole process is, but at the time, it made no sense to me that everyone's considering everything other than maybe Ethereum and Bitcoin as security. And this is why claimants were not creditors, were not allowed to get their alternative assets, were one of the reasons why creditors weren't able to get their alternative assets. And then the judge in that FTX case, which I don't have a dog in that fight, but they just allowed them to just liquidate, creditors' assets at a discount to another big, institution. So
Right.
I guess the question around that is how could they allow that if everyone thinks Solana is a security or that's what everyone was claiming, even though there's never been a legal precedent on that? Yeah.
So the issue on FTX is they dollarized the claims at petition date. So if you had 12 Bitcoin in there and they went bust, you didn't have 12 Bitcoin. You had 12 Bitcoin at that price at petition date, which was, for the ease of math, call it $20,000 a Bitcoin. So you had $240,000. And so the premise was that the estate isn't in a position to distribute in-kind crypto because they've dollarized your claim. They're in a position to distribute dollars. And the Solana they sold was locked Solana, so it wasn't the same as spot. And they opted to use Galaxy as an auction agent for that. And Galaxy, the first auction, they didn't tell anybody there was an auction other than Pantera, and Pantera was the only bid, and then they hit a really low bid. The second auction, there were plenty of people bidding, and it didn't actually go at all because everyone had low bid, and the estate opted not to sell. But it was the dollarization of the claims that was limiting that. As it relates to equity on chain and why that matters. So when we think about blockchain, it does two things that are super powerful. It displaces trust with truth, and it allows you to transact bilaterally without counterparty risk or settlement risk. And so, with crypto on decentralized exchanges, you and I can face off directly. We can transact. We have no intermediation. We have no risk that one another fails on the trade. With equities, there's at least 7 parties that sit in between a buyer and seller. And so if we can disintermediate that intermediation, that friction, and just create bilateral marketplaces, and if we can do that in a way that extends to being able to cross collateralize and use assets, use assets across purposes, we can unlock a huge amount of value. So when you think about the equity market, usually people think about DTC, the registry, going away. And certainly blockchain eliminates that. And they think about the NASDAQ going away, but you still need an exchange. So you have something like the NASDAQ, but you don't need an introducing broker anymore. You don't need Schwab or Robinhood or TD. You just attach your wallet to the exchange and you trade. And that level of disintermediation is huge. And so we want to kick that process off. And I can't go to the sell side and say, hey, Goldman, hey, JP, let's do our next IPO on blockchain. Because they'd say, why on earth would we do that? It's unproven. No one's done it before. And so this is an organic way for us to get stock trading on chain, that if we can show real liquidity, and one of the biggest alignments we have is we want the value of the stock to go up, and we want it to be liquid, and we want it to be successful. If we can demonstrate that, then I think we can go to other like companies, like a BitDeer, for example. I used them earlier as an example, and say, why are you listed on the NASDAQ? Why aren't you listed on the ATS? Because there's more liquidity here. And we can start building organically a group of companies to migrate on chain. And that's going to be super powerful. And that's why we're contributing value into the transaction, because we recognize how much value that accrues. And that's, there aren't a lot of other ways to do that other than through a process like this and through 1145.
Yeah, I guess where my confusion is when you say ATS or your ATS, you're talking about that ATS trading being done on chain, right? So correct?
So we have an alternative trading system. It's the only one that exists that allows you to trade blockchain native assets that settle in bearer form.
Keep it simple, stupid for me. So are those assets?
Can I jump in a little layman's terms, I guess?
Yeah, keep it simple, stupid for me, Tony. Yeah.
So Ionic Digital is a public company, right? So they have to meet all the public reporting, guidelines like every other company that's listed. The only difference is they haven't been approved to be listed on, the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange. They're only listed on Odyssey. So you would just be replacing Odyssey with Figure Markets, and in Figure Markets, the way it's set up is you can actively trade that equity. Whereas on Odyssey, you can't. So they would need an uplisting to a NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange or whatever, or the Slovenian Stock Exchange, right, in order for you to buy and sell the stock.
Yeah.
But it is public stock.
Yeah, that's great. Right. Okay. Yeah, now I got it completely. And if you remember previously, Mike, in one of the previous spaces, I mentioned that I was trying to buy there's some people that were calling, crying, and very depressed, and I was trying to be a philanthropist capitalist at the same time and buy their shares before they were listed, and Odyssey wasn't allowing that to happen. And I was like, how the fuck are they not letting people sell if they want to? So, okay, good.
Right.
All right, fair enough. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Tony, I should bring you along to all my meetings. You can decipher for me.
Tony can talk to the idiots like me and break it down, and then we'll be good. Yeah.
I don't think you're an idiot, and I appreciate you calling me out and making sure that I'm saying stuff that's accessible. So thank you for doing that.
I hang out with a bunch of nerds, and I'm the non-nerd in the room, so appreciate it.
Got it.
All right, Celsius Facts.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thank you for bringing me up. Just for full disclosure, I'm not a shareholder. I'm just here to defend the community, bring some facts and numbers. I think, Mike, I think my personal account is Ron Polbot. I think I always been pushing you to keep around our community. But I think my only issue here is I think that you are being too hostile towards the board. And I would like to know if you just focus on a pure shareholder push towards the board, if that wouldn't make a stronger position. So just here are my 2 cents. What about just increasing to 50% the number of shareholder creditors, putting Mike as the board, the chairman of the board, and even if it's possible to maybe keep Manny Aidoo, but put it in a normal board position. I know you guys are thinking, okay, this guy is the bad guy, but if you look at the theory behind this, you basically are just approaching this from a shareholder perspective to add value and transparency. So even if the board refuses, they are kind of making your position stronger even if you take it to court. The other point I want to say is that the current financials that are known from Ionic Digital is that they haven't sold a single Bitcoin. So that means everything they mined, they kept it. And the issue here, and you correctly pointed out, Mike, that we don't know what is actually happening. If they had like 100 millions of dollars plus the current known Bitcoins, they are doing still a remarkable job. So we first need to know what is the fiat value, because if you know the fiat value, you know how much they are burning, you know how much BTC they mine, and you can unpack everything. So I'm just worried that if you are jumping towards an opportunity that might not be so opportunistic. Do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I'll go first, and then Tony can go. Look, I sent a letter to the board, and my hope would be to have done this without having to agitate for shareholder vote. And so I sent a letter and said, here's how we think the situation is. Here's what we'd like to propose. The letter didn't talk about changing any of the board members other than the chairperson, Manny. We think there's other issues related to that force, that require him to step out, and we can go into that in greater detail, and that will come to light as we go into this further down the path. And so, that would be great. It would be great to be able to handle it that way, and it would be great to be able to step into the company and see that they're doing a bang up job. Generally when they fire the CEO and the board is a rotating set of musical chairs, that's not indicative that they're doing a bang up job. But I hope they are, right? And I hope we go in there and it looks great. And if that's the case, then maybe there's a lot of different options in terms of how we get maximized shareholder liquidity or shareholder value. But I'm not taking a predisposition of antagonism to anyone. Others on this call have stronger issues with the board. I'm just focused on what is the fastest, easiest path to get liquidity for folks. And the way to do that is to list the equity on the ATS and either sell the company, part the company out, or find an organic direction where new capital can come in and take people out that are already here. And that's what I'm focused on. But again, I'd be thrilled to be able to do this with the board. It doesn't appear that the board is interested in engaging with us on this. And let me just add to this. There's been a lot of flack that's been pushed to the board advisors. We talked about this in the last week's conversation. There's nothing a board advisor can do in this capacity. So this is really a board governance construct, and our focus should be on either working with the board, forcing the board into a decision, or replacing the board to force a decision.
Just one small thing. Don't you think that if we had 50% of creditors on the board, plus Mike here from your team,
well,
we basically could change everything, right?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. That's what I'm advocating. I'm saying that if we go to a 5-person board, 3 of those should be shareholder elected seats, and those I would hope that creditors would be nominated for those seats and elected by their fellow shareholders. So, and by the way, if we need to go to 7 and there's 5 shareholder elected seats, great. That there's no issue with that. And so, this is your company. Like you got screwed in this process with Celsius. Unfortunately, I worry you're getting screwed again. It's your company, you own it, and you can fix it. And we're here to lean in and help do it.
All right, Amy?
Yep.
Tony, did you call my name?
Yes.
Oh, thank you, guys.
Yes.
First of all, Mike and Michael, just want to say thank you for having this conversation. Tony, thank you for everything that you've been doing. I just want to mention one thing. I remember during the previous process, I think you guys were you were the only ones that even acknowledged people that were liquidating loans, but that's not why we're here today. So I just want to say thank you. On a personal note, my losses look between about $150,000 to $200,000 at this point, based on current market value, and that's my mother's retirement. So it's been a really painful process for me personally, but what I'd love to do is find out how can creditors support you in this initiative. Mike, I say it all the time, man. I live in Texas. If you guys are hiring, do I have to go out to Cedarvale? Do I plug in machines? Do I throw in things? What can we do to actually make an actionable change? And what can we do to help? Because at this point, any value that we can extract from this to try to get back into our pockets, to create something of success, is what we want to do. So whatever we can do to help, I'd love to just see, what can the community do to help you guys?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And look, I think the key is signing up to support the vote and getting the word out to fellow shareholders, and just making sure people are aware of what's going on and what we're trying to do. And it's a process that just started, and hopefully it's not a long process. Hopefully we can facilitate change relatively quickly here. But appreciate all the support that you've given. I was going to make light that someone needs to go out to Cedarvale and sweep the floor, but I didn't want to make too much light of the situation.
Mike, give me the broom. I got you.
So, but I appreciate the support. Like let me just reiterate: this is your company. You are the owners. You are the shareholders of it, and you should direct what's going to happen here. It's not any individual people on the board's companies. And so now is the time to lean in. And people are like, oh well, I only own 50 shares or 100 shares or whatever. It doesn't matter. It all matters. Right. And this is an opportunity to lean in. And what we're hoping to do by contributing figure equity into this, we think there's a huge amount of upside to that. And we would hope that people would capture into that upside and be able to pull some back here.
I appreciate that. If you guys happen to be looking for an interim CEO to get paid more than $1,000 a day to leave within the year, I don't want to make this a negative conversation, but I'm ready. I'm available.
All right. Hey guys, I'm gonna call an end to the spaces just because we're running up on time here, close to 6:30. This has been recorded. This recording will be out. I'll make sure that everyone has access to it. I will take the transcript of the plan proposal. I will make that publicly available as well. And then, if there are more questions, we're happy to have more spaces and lean in.
Yeah, I mean, also, like, I wrote the first letter. When I was writing the second one, I put a tweet out there if anyone wants to join this letter. In like 3.5 days, I had over 1 million shares represented. There's another 2 million, I believe, that are kind of interested. They want to help. They just don't know what to do, whatever. There's a lot of people that want to get involved. There's a lot of people that can't get involved. Like Mike said, if you have 1,000 shares, you have 100,000 shares, you got 50 shares. It really doesn't matter. You're a shareholder. You own the company. You're a part owner of this. You have rights just like everybody else does. Doesn't matter how many shares you have. Each share counts one time. So if you only have 50, then you got 50 votes. Those votes matter. We need every vote we can. It's been less than a week. We made incredible progress in less than a week. I think, another week, 2 weeks, I think I'm pretty confident we'll get there.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining this. I'm gonna close it off, and as I said, this will be available. The recording. I'll put the transcript out in public domain, and look forward to continuing the conversation.
Great. Thanks, everyone.